Now, if any of you are wondering just how valuable purpose-built communities is, I couldn't provide you an adequate answer to describe just how important that they've been to me, my board, and the community in which we serve. I told someone yesterday that, purpose-built has actually been my right arm, my left leg, my big toe, and everything else. To date, our initiative, has been able to bring substantial change to the community. On the 200-acre site that we serve, we now have over 500,000 square feet of retail. We also opened a 35,000 square foot state-of-the-art Y in January. We have Cook Children's Health Clinic on site, as well as an organization called All Church Homes, which helps protect children from abuse, neglect, and family separation, and help children overcome these things when they actually do happen. We are home to Uplift Mighty Charter School, serving grades pre-K through 12 with an enrollment of over 1,500 children. In collaboration with our development partner, Columbia Residential, we have 140 mixed income units with 120 units of senior housing coming online in 2020, followed by an additional 140 units of mixed income housing. We've collaborated with the Fort Worth Independent School District regarding the Leadership Academy at Mitchell Boulevard, a pre-K through 5th grade public school with an enrollment of over 400 children. Now, for all of us in the Purpose-Built Communities Network, we have to get to know the various funding streams that are available for all sectors to support our efforts. The Choice Neighborhoods program run by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development has become one of the key ways to build mixed income housing at scale within the context of holistic neighborhood revitalization. It is both highly sought after, but highly competitive, as you may imagine. Today, we'll hear from the director of the Choice Neighborhood Program at HUD and representatives from the Purpose-Built Network who are working with this program.
It is a great honor for me to be here. First of all, Atlanta is always near and dear to my heart because it's where the first Hope 6 project was that Carol and I worked on together, the Mixed Finance Hope 6 project. And there were many more to come after that. Just a little bit more about me, because I would hate for you to think that I'm a lifer at HUD. So let's be just really, really clear. I have been in this field since 1978. Yes, I started when I was 10. I've worked for cities, mostly industrial Midwestern cities, nonprofit housing organizations. I helped set up a whole bunch of nonprofit housing organizations with philanthropy that coordinated with each other. So yes, the earlier discussion was quite interesting to me. I also was a high-level city official in Chicago at the Department of Housing, and I went and I was a developer for a long time. And then I went to HUD to do the mixed finance program and left. Swore I'd never go back to HUD, ever, ever, ever. And the only reason I ever went back was to run the Choice Neighborhoods program, because it's something, basically my friends all said, put up or shut up, because it was about all of the intersections of community development. Housing, people, neighborhood health, education, all the things that we all say you have to have in order to reinvest and rebuild distressed neighborhoods. So I said I'd go for 2 years. I'm now on 8. So just thought I'd share that with you. Now, I'm not very good with this stuff, but so, yes, so I'm not going to read to you, but our main goals of Choice, we have 3 main goals, which is housing, people, and neighborhood. And, with Hope 6, we learned how to do the housing, not a slight to Todd, but we learned how to do that. It's not really easy, but we know how to do that. The people element is difficult, and we're learning a lot in making sure that everyone goes through case management. Again, this is for distressed public housing and assisted housing, which is a new kick with Choice Neighborhoods. So a lot of assisted, i.e. old Section 8 buildings, are eligible if you can get the owners to participate in this program. We've had quite a few, but it's generally when the ownership is transferring, and that happens. Every housing authority in every city has the first right of refusal to purchase one of these expiring use Section 8 projects, so you should keep your eyes out for that. I think the key thing here is when we talk about neighborhood. Hope 6 never talked about neighborhood. Some places had spillover effects. Others ended up with really great housing and the neighborhood around it never changed. But I think the major thing is the last sentence there, which I can't memorize, but it's about places where people would want to live and invest in. So that's what we try to do. So we are all over the country, and we have two programs. We have a planning program, and we have an implementation program. So Choice Neighborhood Planning Grants, I think this is particularly important for this group. Our grants are from $350, they've gone up to as much as $1 million, because we started something called Planning and Action Grants. To date, we have 89, 88 something planning grants we've funded. They're 2 to 3 year grants. And the Planning and Action Grants are about doing while planning, doing a project. We don't ask you to figure out what the project is, but it's to use a project of about 900,000 or a few of them as a way to organize people, as a way to get people to come out. You know, we have pocket parks, we have redone viaducts with murals, and you'll see some of these. But here's the priorities, or here's the funding ranges. We have our planning grant competition just finished, and I think there's somebody here from Omaha. Just got one, yep. So we'll have another planning grant application starting, well, we have to get funded. We still don't have our 2020 budget, but we'll cover that soon. So as soon as we have a budget, the planning grant NOFA will come out. We're currently in the middle of an implementation round. So here's some of the action activities we do. I can't read them, but I think I mentioned some of the things we do. In addition, we ask people to do their own little action activities. If you only get a $350,000 grant, you also are required to take about $100,000 of that and do some kind of action activity, so that part of this is to keep the momentum going, especially for the planning and action. It's to keep the momentum going from the time the grant ends till the time you might get implementation grants or move on to your own implementation. People get sick of planning, right? Plan, 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 and nothing ever happens. So this is a way to have something happen and movement. Right, so then we did a series of just action activities. We gave former planning grants action activities money. And here, this is one of my favorite, and it's just opened this summer. In Shreveport, they did an entire kitchen incubator. And when we do this, we require matching funds. So they got matching funds, they have an operator, and now they have a complete food incubator, and they expect to have more training and more classes there, and it's extraordinary. So that's a choice planning and implementation grant. Here's our eligible activities. Here's our, I can't read, but you can read. This is for our planning grants. So again, it's for distressed public housing and distressed multifamily housing. We require that the neighborhoods have a 20% poverty rate, which is not hard to find in many of our cities, unfortunately. And we do keep track of crime data, so it's supposed to be a neighborhood that's got some crime problems, which maybe we need to change our percentages based on the conversation earlier today. Our implementation grants, we've had implementation grants since 2010. We have 31 grants. I think it's 32, we just named another one. Here are some pictures of, at the top is Columbus. I believe these are all Columbus pictures, so that's where Autumn's been involved. Our grants are usually $30 to $30 million, depending on how many units you have, but that's the maximum grant. This time, we're up to $35 million. You can use 15% of the grant for people activities, which are usually supportive services, coordination, and case management. There's also a lot of focus on education and early child care. So we have education navigators in many of our sites. We don't tell you what to do. That's the beauty of this program. You tell us, and sometimes we have discussions and debates, but it has to be within our program guidelines. And here's the kicker, and this is the one I keep wanting Congress to know about, and your mayors, et cetera. For every dollar of choice money and we have this documented, it's $7 additional of investment. So for $30 million, most of these neighborhoods end up getting an additional $200,000 in these neighborhoods, and that's an $200 million. In infrastructure, commercial activity, other redevelopment nearby, additional housing, private sector housing, or the partnerships. So it's really changing these neighborhoods. Now remember, every time we talk about changing neighborhoods, generally 30 to 40% or more, 50% of the housing, oh, I've got 3 minutes left, is permanently affordable, either for Section 8 families or public housing families. Another 20, 30, 40% is tax credit, up to 60% a median, permanently, or at least the next 20 to 40 years. And then it ranges for the market rate, what the percentage is. So well over 50% of the housing that's built is affordable. No, you know, people are not getting moved out. Our housing goals, which are to create new neighborhoods, and this is Memphis, which just opened. And you can see what it looked like before. We're really big on quality urban design, putting the streets back, getting rid of the isolation and the barriers that many of you have noticed in public housing that isolates the communities. Here's just a picture of some of our various developments. I won't go through, but you know, Chicago's there, and New Orleans is in one of them, Louisville, Seattle, San Francisco. The people goals, as I said, they're locally designed strategies, case management, self-sufficiency. We have a lot of focus on health and education. Here's an example, and this is quite remarkable. In San Francisco, the income levels of all of the public housing residents overall went from $12,000 a year to $24,000 a year in the term of the grant. That is extraordinary. And we're seeing in every single one of our sites, incomes are up, employment is up. In Memphis, the employment went from 27% to 57%. This is concentrated work. It's not just, you know, spending money as in Chicago. We used to call it walk-around money. You know, here, take the money and walk around. Don't bother me. No, this is really focused money. So, in Pittsburgh, their most remarkable partnership we have is that the Allegheny County is going to take over the supportive services. Talk about sustainability. The grant's almost over, and all of those families will continue to get supportive services. We have some really great health programs in Cincinnati in particular, where there's, I think, there's a drop of from 0 to 95% now of the kids, or 100% of the kids are no longer going to ERs. I can't read all of this, but you can see that our preschool enrollment is gone up remarkably in all of our sites. So you see the goals of the program. We are really keen on the community improvements for neighborhood. We will not let you do sewers. Anything that the city would normally do, we will not let you do. We want to focus on economic development. We've gotten grocery stores, commercial space. We have parks that have been built in the middle of the redevelopment as a part of the park redevelopment and the urban design. But I think one of the best things, oh, here we have another food, the world of community development, I swear, is food incubators. Anyway, this one is in Boston, and we have a $500,000 commitment of our money, and it was $13 million. There's people here now who are started by making cookies, and now they sell to Whole Foods. This is what it looked like before. It was right across from the housing development. The food trucks come here and prepare their foods. Lots and lots of people, including returning citizens who can't get normal jobs, are able to work through here. Here are some extraordinary partnerships that are part of Choice Neighborhoods. I can't read them all, but Temple University and the public housing residents created after-school programs where they provide their faculty and students. The Seattle Housing Authority and the Seattle University have done all this education work, and they have a cradle-to-grave education program now for all of the people who live in that development. You can read some of the rest. These are things that would never happen without Choice Neighborhoods. We become like an alma mater that makes people think just because HUD thinks it's okay, everybody else thinks it's okay. The best thing I think we've done is without any of our money. We got a grocery store in Chicago. Without our money, the neighborhood gave it such confidence that there was a grocery store that we didn't have to help subsidize. And that's putting you back in HUD, as I say. So there you go. What's next? Well, we don't have our budget yet. But I will tell you this. We are in the House for $300 million, and we are in the Senate for $100 million. We've never been in the House. We've been in the Senate. We've been zeroed out every year. This program, every year, has gotten more money than it's gotten in the past. I hear that people don't want to apply because they think it's not going to be there. Can I promise? No. But I have been told on some good authority that we will continue to get funded. So please, do not think we're not going to be here, because I believe we're going to be here, and Congress has great faith in this program. We just announced our planning grants: Omaha, Huntsville, Rome, Georgia, and Trenton, New Jersey. And we will be doing a round of implementation grants that we will be announcing sometime in the spring. Applications are due November 4th, so if you're really good, you could try it, but it's a little hard in 3 weeks.
So I'm going to do my best to kind of give you guys an overview of what we did in Columbus. Our organization, our quarterback organization, is called PACT, which stands for Partners Achieving Community Transformation. We did not start as a nonprofit, but we did start before we did our choice planning grant application, and we were well underway before the implementation grant. So one thing that Mindy hit on that I hope you'll hear very clearly in my comments is that the work that you're doing, and whether you're aiming towards choice or not, is local, and local context is most important. And honestly, I don't think that you'll be incredibly successful at even winning the award if you hadn't thought about it prior, if you hadn't thought about the work. So if you're at this conference, you're probably already thinking about this work in this way. So I would encourage you that you're probably well on your way. And you met Mindy Terboff, so maybe put that in your application. But so our neighborhood in Columbus, the geography is known as the Near East Side in Columbus. I think, Carol, we're still the largest purpose-built network. We're probably still the largest choice neighborhood, and that our total planning area is 800 acres. So we formed our neighborhood partnership, and I'll tell you our story in a moment, trying to base the geography that we selected on natural boundaries. Those natural boundaries are highways, and the natural cutoff of another community. So when you think about the Near East Side and the PACT geography, it is a large area. Our choice neighborhood public housing site is 26 acres. I've talked with a couple of you over the last couple days, and your entire neighborhood is 26 acres. So just for context, we're a very large community. The other thing that I would note just about our neighborhood and kind of setting up the story about Columbus is that our neighborhood is just, excuse me, east of downtown Columbus, which is a growing, thriving community in and of itself. And then just west of Bexley, which is the richest inner ring suburb of Columbus, so a very wealthy Jewish community. And we're this gem. Excuse me, I'm trying not to sneeze. We're this gem of a community in between downtown and this Jewish suburb. So just kind of in context, thinking about that. The other thing that I would say, and you all would say this about your communities too, is that our neighborhood is very asset rich. So we have a complete feeder pattern of public schools. We have a YMCA, the county has an office. And really the way that I came into this work is that we have an anchor institution being the Ohio State University in the neighborhood. So looking at this neighborhood on a map, in 2010, before we even started our planning work, it was already asset rich. So we had all the right ingredients in the pot. So just to kind of explain how our partnership formed, in December of 2010, Ohio State was planning to build a large hospital on our main campus. So the Near East Side is not where our main university campus is, and I should say that I came into this work as a loaned executive from Ohio State. So we were planning to build this large hospital on main campus. We projected that we would create 6,000 new jobs. And so we approached the city of Columbus and said, in exchange for this new income tax revenue, we'd like to have a rebate for the jobs that we created. And the city granted us that in a job creation tax incentive agreement that we entered into. So the university and the city entered into this tax incentive agreement that would give us $35 million over a 15-year period. The genius part of this tax incentive agreement was not that we were able to achieve this income tax rebate from these jobs being created on our main campus. The genius part was that our mayor at the time, Mayor Coleman, said, but the first $10 million you need to invest back into the community. Ohio State is a land grant institution. There was no brainer there. Of course, we want to invest it back into the community. And he said, wait, not the university district, the Near East Side. And again, the university said, yep, that's what we're going to do. So I'm giving you a very quick version of how these things came to life. But that is really the truth. So the first $10 million of the tax incentive, Ohio State was to invest in the Near East Side community where our East Hospital, and we were planning to build an outpatient care facility at the time. Separately to that, the Columbus Metropolitan Housing Authority had applied to HUD to dispose of several of its properties in Columbus. One of them was Point Extra Village, which is in the Near East Side. And they didn't have a plan for what to do. And the mayor said, all right, we're going to bring the Housing Authority along too, because they're a part of this community and they don't have a plan for what they're going to do if they demolish this property. Our partnership started in December of 2010 with 4 sentences of legislation, excuse me, and no plan of how we were going to create a master plan for the community. But we knew that these 3 large stakeholders, the City of Columbus, Ohio State, and the Columbus Metropolitan Housing Authority, all had some vested interest, whether it was the Housing Authority, who is still the largest landholder in our geography, the city, who cares about all of its neighborhoods, and the university, who was the anchor. So we came together and we said, we're going to create a master plan for this community. The partnership, again, 4 sentences of legislation led to 2 pages of an MOU that together we were going to create a master plan. We thought we were going to do the master plan in a year, and then we would all go our merry ways, and we would invest our dollars appropriately aligned to this master plan that we would create together. What ended up happening is a lot of cool stuff, including Choice Neighborhoods. So I'll talk through a little bit about that partnership. Like Mindy, let me make sure I told you everything that's on these slides. Yes. So as Carol mentioned, our master plan, we envisioned that we would create this plan. Like many communities, there was a neighborhood plan for the Near East Side. We were looking to make an implementation plan. How would we use the $10 million that Ohio State would leverage to move this community forward in a holistic way? So this was our thought in January of 2011 as we initiated our planning process. A lot of times people come and ask me kind of what's most important, what should you do? I have 2 master's degrees. I have no plan of getting a PhD, but if I did, I would probably write about governance and how governance is the most important piece to this type of work. And most people are like, oh, that's kind of boring. But it really is the structure that will keep your work moving forward. It will allow you to be agile. It'll allow you to adapt to opportunities like choice and others that may come your way. But governance is so, so important. On the slide, I'm really only showing you one piece of our governance structure because it's the most important piece, which is the part that focuses on the community's input into our process. So in our governance structure, from the very beginning in January 2011, we initiated 5 subcommittees that are listed on the slide, thinking that these were the 5 elements that would be most important in our implementation plan. Each subcommittee was led by people in the community. So we didn't just talk the talk, we really walked the walk. I sat on all 5 of our subcommittees and really approached the work as the thread, trying to find commonalities, but they weren't meetings for the sake of meetings. More than 100 people showed up for 18 months to do this work because it was meaningful to them. In the process of that summer, we applied for the Choice Planning Grant. We were already planning, we were already engaging our community, we were already getting beat up in the media that Point Extra Village was going to get demolished at some point with no plans going forward. So I'm telling you this story too, and I don't want to forget to tell you how hard it was. I do often tell people, and the women in the room will appreciate this, that I gained 30 pounds to prove how hard the work was. So this was our governance structure, and I'm happy to talk more about that. I say that as well, that we were already planning before we even heard about the Choice Neighborhoods Planning Grant, but naturally our planning elements aligned to those of Choice Neighborhoods. We did not change ourselves to fit into Choice. And so I want to make sure, again, that you understand that the enthusiasm for the Choice Neighborhoods Grant, and we are so grateful to have had it in Columbus, is common, right? Everybody can get enthusiastic about $30 million or now up to $35 million, but the endurance to do this work is rare, and you have to have your own structure, and you have to know your own community in order to be successful. Mindy's not in Columbus often. It's me that has to be looking at the community when we're doing this work. So be clear that you're committed to this work in the way that whatever makes sense for your community. You don't have to use our template. We have since been able to replicate the PACT model in other neighborhoods in Columbus, and everyone looks a little different. And my colleagues from the city of Columbus are here that have tried to replicate, and I try to tell them what I would have done differently now 9 years later. So we're still ourselves, and we naturally fit into the choice priorities is the point of that slide. So the other thing too, just to kind of further dig into that, is that we had this commitment to community engagement that was unwavering. So we didn't just do the subcommittees, because if we did, we wouldn't have reached most of our residents. So we just kept trying over and over. Direct mail, a website, social media, we're still trying today. I still meet people in the community that I didn't know 9 years ago. So the effort is ongoing. Don't get complacent if you have a solid advisory committee and people who show up to your focus groups. Chances are it's the same people coming. And so we also really want to be intentional about engaging the people who aren't coming, because the work that you're doing impacts them as well. We've won a lot of awards around our community engagement processes, but locally people don't care. We're not important. So I'm just kidding. But we really have, done a lot of different ways. And the thing that I'm most proud of in our planning process is that people who live in the PACT neighborhood can tell you what's in the blueprint, because they authored it. So I get a lot of credit for putting it together. I went to planning school to learn how to do that. But it really came from the community's perspective. I'm going. My last slide is really focused on kind of telling you all our story, which again directly connects back to what Mindy said, which is that it's local. And an exercise that I think is worthwhile for you, and we do this at a number of different grant opportunities, is read the application and go through the process. Because if you don't get it, a lot of our leverage letters, I'll tell you, for choice, were not contingent on the grant, because we were going to do it anyway. And so we were
That's why we do it.
Yes. We were very, very focused on making sure that people bought into our blueprint for community investment, regardless of this $30 million. What the $30 million allowed us to do is to reposition our public housing site faster. It would have been, and you all know this, multiple cycles of LIHTC applications to get the site done. The last phase of our development will be done next summer, so please come to Columbus and see it. It's a beautiful site. But a couple things too that I would just add as I pass the clicker to Todd is that the city's partnership was invaluable. And so if there are local leaders here, the City of Columbus matched the Choice Neighborhoods grant. And then above that, we had more than $220 million of leverage in our application that we've been able to exercise in implementation. I am not cheap. My husband's name is James, but I call him Budget Bob. Budget Bob is very cheap. But in this work, I've been cheap. And so a lot of people ask me, is the $10 million gone from Ohio State? And it's not. We don't spend a single dollar of that money without matching it to somebody else's dollar. And I just made that rule up. So we still have about half of that money 9 years in. So continue to engage partners, but importantly, engage the community. And locally is where a lot of this work will be driven. Hopefully that was
awesome. So thank you, Autumn. That was terrific. Again, they didn't change who they were and what they wanted to do to chase the money. They went after a program that values local solutions. The partnership's amazing. The commitment on the city to match the CNI grant, the creativity of Ohio State University and the former mayor to create that $10 million investment to kind of get things kicked off, and a true and authentic engagement with the community to respond to what the community needs are. Really just first rate, first rate. I want to be Autumn when I grow up. Now, Todd Lieberman from Brinshore has been working in choice neighborhoods in several cities around the country. Todd.
Thank you very much, Carol. And this is an honor to be here talking about what are two extremely, I think, mutually reinforcing trends in community development and organizations and funding vehicles that should be used in concert as much as possible. I wanted to say something before I even get started, just in full disclosure. Mindy was my teacher 15 years ago, 13. So I've been involved in this world and the transition from Hope 6 to Choice from federal money to philanthropy and now a marriage of the two. So really honored to be here on the stage with Mindy. It means a lot to me.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
So I'm going to just quickly point out that this is a picture from a community day in Omaha. My daughter's head is slightly chopped off on the top of the screen there, but she is there. This was last summer. There were about 500 people there. And I think what's important is that the spaces that we create, the neighborhoods that we help to improve and the lives that we shape, that's really what it's all about, that we're coming together over physical space. And this picture just was a bunch of people watching a band and on a beautiful summer day and in a neighborhood that was completely created, for them. So pretty exciting. Okay, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about Brinshore, if I can, there we are. So the company I work for is a community-focused real estate development company. We really focus on partnering with nonprofits, cities, housing authorities, and HUD to help translate vision into reality in a lot of neighborhoods. We're now in, 17 states in the District of Columbia. That might be 18 now. But a lot of our work has led us to where we are today. Rich made a comment this morning, Rich Shortino. Rich, could you wave? Rich is one of the founders of Brinshore and our thought leader in a lot of this work. He made the comment today that there really weren't resources like choice and purpose-built to help guide in a very systematic way community development 15 years ago. So this is a big, I think, innovation in the work we're doing, that purpose-built is a lens and choice is a funding vehicle and a lens to help us move forward. We are now working with 3 choice implementation grantees and 1 planning grant. We're extremely excited to be doing that. In 2 of those cases, actually 3 of those cases, they're also purpose-built communities. And I don't think that's by accident. And there are 4 purpose-built communities we're working with in the country as well. I'm going to quickly show you this is one story. I could tell you a story from each one of the choice grantees and the purpose-built community members that we're working with, but I'm going to tell you one story today and then summarize with how I think we got to where we are with that story, and then something that I think all of you can take away, how choice and purpose-built can work together. So I'm going to, if you bear with me, I'm going to tell the Omaha 75 North story. It's not to say the Norfolk story isn't a great story to tell, or the Southside Terrace story in Omaha, or for that matter, the work we're doing in Kansas City. But I'm going to tell the story of Omaha. So you can see Highlander was a project that we began working on about 6 years ago. It's extremely well located within the city. That's the city context, about a mile from the central business district. And the clicker. Can we go to the next slide? Okay, here's the neighborhood. The neighborhood, this was a former public housing site that was demolished about 7 years ago. And the school that we're working with at Highlander is, you can see, about 5 blocks to the north. There are a lot of assets right next to the site, but this is really where we started working, with a large vacant piece of ground that at one time was a very stigmatized public housing complex that was demolished the wrong way, where it was demolished and people were just sent out in the wind to where they landed. And I think a lot of people in the neighborhood remembered that, and when we started work on Highlander, that was a contextual element that was always hanging over us. So when we started work, there'd been 20 years of planning on the site, multiple plans, the city, housing authority, other partners. And the 75 North became part of the purpose-built network after really seeking for a model of how to transform the neighborhood. And the Sherwood Foundation, you heard from Kristen Williams this morning, found Othello Meadows, and Othello and his team began searching the country for models of how to redevelop the site. And at this point, I think everyone was at a place that we talked about earlier, which is planning fatigue, that we're ready for implementation. That doesn't mean you stop. Doesn't mean you stop community engagement. It just means that you change your footing. Instead of saying, maybe this could happen, you start saying, this is happening, here's when it's happening, and here's how we're going to get it done. And that's where people were. Our plan called for about 280 mixed income units and 65,000 square foot accelerator use, which I'll talk about in a second, near a reconstituted elementary school that we talked about earlier today, and near an early childhood program. I should say that this was our plan, and we got started, jumped right in, after a lot of very intentional planning and work with the team and stakeholders. And so now we have just a lot of pictures of the neighborhood, the first two phases. And I want to say this is really important, and it echoes what Rich in his comment this morning mentioned, which is you have to make a statement and form a proof of concept early on. And our work at Highlander was an effort immediately with our funders, partners, and with the community to say, you know what, let's create a critical mass now, because we don't have the kind of time to do things as slowly as they've done in the past. So we built a 65,000 square foot accelerator building, which you see here, which includes university, Creighton University, a community college, a food hall, food's, the thing. Coffee shop, roastery, we have a health clinic coming in, and an aquaponics facility, as well as the home for the quarterback organization. 75 North on the ground was the key quarterback. They were pushing this along day to day. Every morning they woke up, pushing this forward, but we added the structural capacity, the guarantees, the financial backbone to push each real estate phase forward. I felt like the partnership, could have gone different ways. It could have been where we're just the subject matter expert doing real estate, but what it ended up was that we were working shoulder to shoulder every day. If Othello Meadows were here, he would say, we were attached to the hip for several years, and it's true. I mean, it really takes a true partnership to push these things forward. This is the first phase residential. First phase, we wanted to make sure there's a variety of architectural styles and types, amenities. The accelerator building, you can see here, and it's, again, a very important, really beehive and centerpiece in the community. Some more pictures. This is our coffee shop, roastery. And I wanted to show a couple pictures here just to, the space is being used. So when we built this core, what will be considered in HUD terminology, critical community improvement, which was the accelerator, it's for the residents, but it also attracts people from the outside. So you're not only serving people, but you're breaking down barriers at the same time. And this is from the same community day last year before the fireworks started. Pretty awesome. Okay, I don't have a ton of time, so I'm going to jump into the important points here. Okay, so the proof of concept is incredibly important. And you want to be able to go back to all your funders, your partners, and be able to say, here's why what we did made sense and we need to do more of it. And purpose-built communities choice isn't about building a single phase. It's about building a neighborhood that grows over time. So these two phases were incredibly important. We went back and were able to say that our demand on the market rate side, 40% of our units are market rate, 60% are income restricted. We have about 600 people on the wait list, and it's equally split between market and affordable. We also are able to go back and say that the public's in support of this, the community's in support of it, the city's in support of it, and they're hungry for more. So I think that is where choice came in here. And this is extremely important because in this case, choice wasn't the only answer. It was a way to magnify the impact of the work we've already done. So we moved into a different footing. We worked with Kristen and the Housing Authority to think about a structure where they could look more broadly about a couple different opportunities. Southside Terrace is another planning grant that was just awarded by HUD. And Spencer were two opportunities at different times. So the Housing Authority, 75 North and Brinshore worked together on putting together the transformation plan and the application on their own. And that was a very important step. We did not seek funding for the planning grant. We felt like we had done enough with Highlander and with the work we've done in the community that there was hunger. And there were also two fatal flaws. And I'm gonna tell you exactly the things that bothered Othello and me and Rich, were that couple problems. And these are problems that have solutions. One, we're investing a ton of money in the school. Sherwood is, and the school is 5 blocks from the site. Are we really impacting the kids who go to that school in a way that's as intentional and powerful as it could be? Well, 20% of the kids are in the public housing facility adjacent to the school. This investment with HUD allowed us to impact those kids and those lives. Second thing is, are we really producing a mixed income community that digs deep enough in the affordability? Choice allows us to create permanent affordable housing for people that are extremely low income. And the third piece is we are investing in the school, we're investing in early childhood, but again, there's a geographic gap. How do we close that gap? And part of that is bringing in the city. So one of the key things that we were able to do is we served a larger area of impact. We were able to transform the public housing adjacent to the key school within the purpose-built network. We were able to complete Highlander and through the leverage of choice and other leverage, and and provide direct support to some of the students. So some of the other elements that choice, and I'm going to talk just for 2 more minutes, okay? Some of the other elements in choice that I think are very intentional that purpose-built community members should learn is that, or should work with, is their deliberate focus on case management and supportive services. They have a very good framework for both ensuring that you're serving the impacted households within public housing and you're tracking it in a very data-driven way and to provide resources. This is extremely important and not always on the forefront, on the front end. You want to transform a geographic area, you want to help people. I think HUD has created some very systematic approaches to and toolkit for getting that done. The other thing that I think is important is the critical community improvements. That this is a way to help leverage other money and create a glue, a connection, connective tissue between developments and other investments. This HUD money that Mindy was talking about is extremely rare. It allows you not to just focus within the boundaries of a development, within the boundaries of a public housing, the walls of a public housing facility. It allows you to impact things that a city would not otherwise do in the public realm to connect uses, which is like, if you think about that, the city's very good at replacing the bones. They'll go in, they'll replace the sewer, they'll put in a sidewalk. But what about everything around it? How do you make the experience for people moving through space better? I think Choice does that through placemaking. Okay, 2 more slides. So we were able to take the work that, this shows at the bottom, standing won't help. Yeah, go gadget arm. Okay, so at the bottom is Highlander, at the top is Howard Kennedy Elementary and Kennedy Square. And so this is a geographic representation of what Choice allowed us to do. It allowed us to magnify the impact, create a corridor of opportunity, and get the work done. So this last slide. So, and this is, I think, the main point of what I'd like to say is that purpose-built and choice models are aligned, and they can be implemented in sync. So it should be part of your toolkit. It also creates an alignment between, I think, during the process of putting in an application and implementation, where a city, a housing authority, and your quarterback will be aligned. And it creates a very deliberate sort of shoulder-to-shoulder mentality, which allows people to get work done. And I think that might be the most important thing, that through the grant, through the guarantees from the city and the housing authority to get the work done, all of a sudden, you have an alignment of interest that is contractual and that allows your purpose-built community member, network member to just move forward, working together. Quarterback, in the case of Omaha, and this is a little bit more detailed, but there's a people component of the plan. And having a place-based nonprofit that is waking up every morning thinking about how to move forward the initiative and going to sleep every night thinking about it, that is a really important element that I think is sometimes there within choice neighborhoods, but isn't always there. So having a people lead that is solely devoted to the revitalization and to the people is super important, and it's a lens that purpose-built has honed extremely well, because that is the central principle of this whole exercise. Leverage, okay. So the fact that we have funders and we have people that are interested in pushing forward the process, I think is a great thing in terms of your scoring on the application, but it also demonstrates support. So beyond your scoring, how does HUD know that their dollars are going to be leveraged, and how do they know that there are people that are going to help support the effort? And that is what, a lot of you here are from the philanthropic community. that is extremely important to being able to leverage federal dollars. I talked about placemaking. Anyway, final point is that if you have public housing or in a distressed or obsolete assisted housing project within your boundaries, you should take a look at this, think about how it fits within your framework, and don't be afraid. There are a lot of communities that are very small, that are small. It's not just for big cities that have won awards. Some smaller communities have planning grants. So don't think that just based on your size, you may be categorically excluded from this competition. That's it.
Thank you. We have a few minutes left. I'd love, if anybody's got any questions, please come up to the microphone. And while you're doing that, I'm going to point out a couple things about Todd's remarks. I was really taken by how many times he used the words we and our, talking about things that are beyond the scope of a real estate developer's responsibility. To me, that's really evidence that everybody is all in on all of this. And so thank you for that. The other piece, the partnership with the community quarterback who owned the land that was the site of the Highland, or the first phase of this redevelopment. You and Othello really were joined at the hip for many years, worked together very effectively. Now that partnership is broadening with the partnership with the Housing Authority for the Spencer Homes work in the Choice neighborhood. So these partnerships evolve over time. You've got different folks at the table for different phases, but that same sense of we are all in this together is a critical piece of having the right values in place so you can make the right decisions over time. Let's start over here.
Okay, thanks to you all. I am completely geeked about this presentation. I'm from Cleveland, where we have a planning grant right now.
Congratulations.
And I actually, in the middle of the, rudely texted the head of our housing authority, Jeff Patterson, and said, "This is so great, I wish you were here." So thanks for the excitement. But so I work for a nonprofit. I mean, I work for a foundation. And one of the things
Which
that's
one?
Oh, I'm sorry, the St. Luke's Foundation, which is a, okay. Oh, nice to see the nods. Anyway, it's frustrating. I mean, we are actually right now the incubator with the Cleveland Foundation for the community quarterback. I know there's a lot of different paths up the mountain, but that happens to be ours right now. And what's frustrating is, for example, we partially matched, along with others, the planning grant. You know, we only had $50,000, so that's what we gave. And it's great to be leveraging.
It's more than many.
I also think it's great to be leveraging different partners around the community. But when you were talking about Columbus, something really struck me. I was looking at your slide, and you had, $10 million from Ohio State, of course, the money from HUD, and the city. And then there was the Columbus Foundation, the United Way. What I'm wondering is, what is the capacity, what different kinds of capacity have you seen across the country for philanthropy to be involved? And we want to leverage our dollars as well. When we, by and large, I don't think in most places, can take over the responsibility. And then, so what's the best we can do? How can it be done well? And then there's the ongoing cost. There's the sustainability issue. So I don't know if there's philanthropic involvement there.
Jump right in. Well, having spent my early career in Cleveland, you sit on a gold mine, okay? I mean, there's a long history in Cleveland of philanthropy and community development, of partnership, and of actually building the community development system in Cleveland, Cleveland and Gunn paid my salary for a long time. But I think we see it in various places. So the thing about choice, or the thing about all of these catalytic redevelopments, is you have to become the city, the foundations, the civic community's priority project. It is critical, and once you are that, you'd be surprised how much the money flows in. When everybody gets on board, and I mean the dollar people, and says, we are going to do this, it happens. It's like Todd said, we're going to do this. And I've seen this, and we have philanthropy in a variety of cities. In Tulsa, it's extraordinary. The Kaiser Foundation's doing all the first mortgage money. We see Casey involved in the supportive services in a lot of places. In Seattle, the Seattle Foundation's involved. There are a lot of philanthropies involved in this work because it's their priority. It becomes their priority. Sustainability, We can talk offline because I don't want to take up all the time.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
This isn't a question as much as it is a statement to Autumn, I believe. I may not look like it today, but 40 years ago, I was that young person that got on a COTA bus from the State House in Columbus and drove through the Near East Side, or rode through the Near East Side, to get to Capital University, which is in Bexley, the community you talked about, to that safety and security of the Bexley community. And I had a number of friends who grew up in Poindexter Village. Now, I think you underplayed the importance of Poindexter Village to the African American community.
I was trying to follow directions and be on time, but I appreciate that.
I'm going to get you off script for a second. So that, I believe, was the first
First in America.
First in America? See, I didn't even notice.
Everybody says that.
So
Yeah,
I had
it's
a
between
number.
us and Cleveland.
I had a number.
Atlanta's gonna. Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a number of classmates who lived there, and I know the issues you had, your organization had, when it announced that it was trying to replace it, so to speak, for lack of a better word. So I appreciate your perseverance, because I go back to Ohio, because that's where my family still is, in Columbus. And now that has become, in terms of what you replaced it with, one of the tours we take, as though I need to see new housing. But that's what it's become, because none of us can believe what was there has now been placed with new housing. So I applaud you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We didn't pay him to say that either.
It's time to wrap up. We're going to take a 30-minute break before we come back to the big room for lunch. I want to say, though, that my takeaway here again is Choice Neighborhood is growing, likely to grow. It enjoys broad political support, both sides of the aisle, at least in the legislature, and in the legislative branch. And then small cities are in play now. That wasn't always the case, but small cities are in play. So everybody should be thinking about this as a potential resource, but don't change what you want to do to chase the money. If this works for you and it responds to the needs that you've identified in your community, go for it. So thanks very much.
And I will add, I have the rock star team at HUD, as Todd will tell you. So you get a choice grant, you get hands-on service.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you to the panel.